good evening, everybody. We're going to get started. Let me introduce Barboza, who's going to talk to us about Coyote Management. She's from California Fish and Wildlife Department. We're going to be recording this for afterwards. We'll make the best effort with the recording. There is the coffee light just came on as I'm talking, so there is coffee for those of you that drink coffee this late today.
I think I am going to hold this, like coordinate myself.
I think you have some
Block
here. Yeah.
So hi everyone, my name is Rebecca Barboza, and instead I'm with the Department of Fish and Wildlife. I've been with the department for about 22 years. My specialty is large mammals, or has been large mammals for the past maybe about 15 years. And since then, I've been the Regional Human Wildlife Conflict Coordinator, which my region is everything from Santa Barbara to San Diego. So I deal with coyotes, bobcats, mountain lions, bears, you name it. Any type of wildlife interaction I deal with. So coyotes in California. I think everyone probably knows what a coyote looks like. They look like a German Shepherd, basically, with a longer snout and a bushy black tip tail. The average weight is about 18 to 25 pounds. That's surprising to some people because in our minds, I think when we fear something, our perception changes, and they do have longer legs, so it does make them look a little bit bigger. But they're about 18 inches at the shoulder, which is about 1.5 feet. So they really are a small to medium-sized canid animal. And their average lifespan is 6 to 8 years. Breeding occurs annually. It begins in late January and February. The pups are born in March and April, and there seems to be a seasonality to our coyote conflicts. It kind of starts in the springtime when the pups are born, and the parental unit is a little more aggressive because they're protecting their pups. The litter size is normally 4 to 7 pups, and that's a function of food availability and coyote population density. So when there's lots of food around and not so many coyotes, they'll actually have more pups. And if there's not so much food and a lot of coyotes, then they're going to have fewer pups. They'll remain as a family unit for at least 6 months, and then by fall the juveniles may disperse. But with adequate food sources, they can remain with the family unit. So in the fall, again, this time of year, when the young that are dispersing go out into the world, they're not as adequate hunters as the parental units are, and they tend to get into a little bit more trouble, those juveniles do. So coyotes have adaptable behaviors and food habits that allow them to live in almost any habitat type in California. So in our arid deserts, in our riparian areas, in our chaparral, and they really do well in the urban areas. And that's probably because there's so many resources available to them. It actually gives them an easier lifestyle in the urban areas. So coyotes have a home range, and they're larger where food is scarce, so about 15 square miles or more. They have to travel farther to find their food. And they have smaller home ranges where food is abundant, so they'll in the urban areas 1 to 3 square miles or less. When food sources are sufficient, dominant pairs may share their territory with related coyotes. And coyotes can live successfully as transient nomads, as pairs, or as family units. So as you begin to see, they're very adaptable, and their behavior, their entire lifestyle is just adapting to whatever comes at them. Their diet, they're opportunistic hunters, and they're omnivores, meaning they eat everything. So they eat plant and animal materials. Their primary prey are rodents and rabbits. And as I said, they eat all kinds of things: insects, fruit, berries, your garbage. They love pet food, roadkill, and they will even take advantage of unprotected small pets and livestock. So the National Park Service did a study on coyotes, and among other things, they took a look at a more rural area versus a more urban area, and they looked at their feeding behaviors. And in both areas, about 60 to 70% of their diet came from human food sources. So almost, 3/4 of their diet is human food sources. In an urban setting, 20% of the diet was cats, And in the rural setting, 3 to 4% of the diets was cats. So it really kind of demonstrated the fact that their foraging behavior depends a lot on what's available to them. So coyotes are normally elusive animals that avoid contact with humans. And as I said earlier, they thrive in urban areas because we provide everything that they need. Coyotes start to associate humans with food and protection, and especially when they're fed, either intentionally by someone leaving handouts for them, or unintentionally by leaving garbage or pet foods or any other edible thing available to them. And when there's no corrective behavior such as hazing or scaring the animal away. So the animal gets food from us, they feel protected because we're not a threat to them, and so they really do thrive in those urban areas. So this slide was taken from a study that was done, and they looked at coyote behaviors, and basically they were able to, the authors were able to determine that there's kind of a predictable pattern of behavior change as coyotes are being fed and living in the urban areas. So at first they start coming out at night, and you really don't see them. You hear them, but you don't see them. And then it kind of progresses to they're showing up during the day, they're taking pets off of leashes, they're killing pets during the day, they're approaching humans during the day, and so forth. And the whole point of me bringing up this slide is that because, for the most part, coyote behavior is predictable, you can start to see the trends and know when the human behaviors need to start or human behaviors need to change. Because this behavior can be avoided. Human attacks and pet attacks can be avoided. So that we want to make sure that we're doing area-wide preventative and corrective measures before we start seeing coyotes causing a lot of trouble during the day. When they start causing trouble during the day, it's almost kind of too late because they're kind of used to us, and hazing really doesn't work all that well. And it's really important, like I said, that human behaviors change. And how do you change your behaviors? Well, a lot of that is education. And that's where the Department's Wildlife Watch program comes into play. And Wildlife Watch is a leadership and educational program guided by agency personnel to manage human-wildlife conflicts. Talk a little bit about Wildlife Watch towards the end. But for now, we'll talk about some management measures, and the first one is exclusion. Fencing, a minimum must be 6 feet high. They can jump over anything smaller. And you need to install an overhang or a roller-type device on the top of the fencing because they can scale a chain link fence. Also, they like to dig under, so you want to bury the fencing 4 to 6 feet or under the ground, sorry. 4 to 6 inches to prevent them from digging under because they actually prefer that sometimes. And then close off crawl spaces under homes, porches, decks, and garden sheds. Again, we don't want to provide the coyotes hiding places in our yard if they get access to them. Next comes hazing behavior modification. Hazing is using sound or visual stimuli to frighten coyotes away from the area. So shouting, throwing objects, using a really strong water hose. One of my colleagues, when we were talking about hazing bears the other day, she mentioned taking a simple garbage can liner and shake that in the wind, and it makes that horrible noise that my pets hate, and it makes a big shape that they don't understand. So, getting that garbage bag and shaking it at the coyote is going to do a lot of good to scare them away. Portable air horns. You want to change up the hazing behavior too. If you always come out and clap your hands and yell, they're going to know that nothing follows that. So you want to change up your hazing as well. And hazing alone doesn't work. It must be combined with habitat management. Habitat management is basically making your property less attractive to coyotes. So in the first picture, there's a lot of areas where the coyote can hide. And the second picture, there's really not. So you want to clear up vegetation, prune lower limbs, harvest fruits promptly. And something else that I thought of the other day, I didn't put it on the slide, but is to clean up your pet waste. because you don't want to advertise to the coyotes that your pets are in your yard. Also, free-ranging cats are a big problem for many reasons, but in this case, they draw coyotes into the neighborhood. So we want to make sure, basically, that small pets, cats and dogs, are kept indoors at all times. Bring their food in. If you must feed them outside, bring the food in immediately. And then larger animals, bring them into some kind of enclosure at night because you want to protect them. When you're walking your dogs, you want to use a leash to walk your dog. Don't let it free range. I'm sure there are leash laws in this area anyways. And you don't want to use those big, long, retractable leashes because if the dog gets too far from you, that coyote is going to perceive it as a free-ranging animal, and it could be vulnerable to attack. Carrying a walking stick, cane, or umbrella. I especially like those umbrellas that you push the button and it automatically snaps open. That's really scary to a coyote. Mix up your routine. Coyotes can learn your schedule. So if you go out every day at 5:30 in the morning and walk your dog, and you go by a certain route, they're going to anticipate that, and you'll probably be seeing them every single morning. So switch up your schedule, and avoid walking pets at dawn or dusk. That's when coyotes are most actively hunting. Avoid areas of dense vegetation and cover, again, because you don't want to be surprised by a coyote jumping out of the bushes. I don't know how many people have poultry or small livestock, but the principles are the same. You want to confine the livestock and protect them from coyotes. The bottom line, if you take nothing home, never feed coyotes, either intentionally or unintentionally. This results in habituation or a loss of fear of humans. And intentionally feeding coyotes put everyone at risk. You can have one person on your block who's feeding coyotes and everybody else is doing the right thing, but that coyote is still going to come around and is going to expect a food reward from every person, regardless of whether or not they want to give it to them. So the entire community must do their part to prevent human-coyote conflicts. So what do you do when you're approached by a coyote? This is a picture of what not to do. This coyote is way too close to this family, and everybody's seated. I was looking at this more closely a couple of weeks ago, and I noticed this guy's hand is down, and he's holding something in this hand. And if you were to see this a little bit clearer, you'd see his lips were pursed, like he's trying to call the coyote into him, perhaps to give him a snack. So that's what you don't want to do. What you do want to do is frighten it away, shout in a deep voice, look directly in its eyes, wave your arms, throw objects. If you have a jacket on, throw it, pull out the sides like a cape. Make yourself look larger, stand up if seated. Now there are some situations where the hazing won't work. For instance, if it's a female with pups, you don't want to haze. If it's an injured or sick coyote, you probably wouldn't want to haze that. And sometimes coyotes are so used to humans that hazing doesn't work. So if you're yelling at this animal and waving your arms and throwing things at it and it's not doing anything, then it's time to back away. So you simply just back off facing the animal until you get enough distance between yourself and the animal, and it will finally leave. So that's the way you handle those situations. But you don't want to turn your back and run, because that can create a trigger a chase reflex in the animal, and they'll chase you. So one of the most common questions that we get at the department is, why can't you just take these coyotes out of our neighborhood and put them back in the forest where they belong, right? And that's something that we enjoy doing, actually. That's, one of the best things of parts of our job is working hand in hand with an animal. However, it really doesn't work. It's not used to resolve human-wildlife conflicts. Primarily because it just moves a problem elsewhere. It would be irresponsible of us as an agency to take a known problem coyote and place it out there so that even if we put it in the forest, it's not used to being in the forest. It's an urban coyote, so it's going to come back to any developed area that it encounters. So that would be really irresponsible of us to do that. And wildlife return to their home range. Coyotes can travel hundreds of miles, and they have a tremendous homing instinct. So you take them out of their habitat, they're going to come right back. Other animals quickly take their place. If something does happen to a coyote, if we try to relocate it and it doesn't come back, well, that opens up an empty spot for the next coyote to come along, and you're going to have the same problems. And it's also a way of spreading disease, and there's generally low survival rate when wildlife are relocated. Again, these are animals for the most part that are urban. They grew up in the urban environment. We put them in the forest. The competitors are going to outcompete them. They're going to run them off. They're going to get into fights with them, injure them. They could starve to death because they don't know how to forage for food. And vehicle strikes are the most common cause of mortality for relocated animals, because they're going to be taking the easiest road back to their home range, and that's usually using the road system. So some residents or municipalities choose to selectively trap and euthanize aggressive coyotes. By law, they're designated as a non-game mammal, and they may be taken at any time of year in any legal manner. So you don't need a special permit from the department to kill a coyote. This is typically implemented by predator control professionals in suburban settings. We don't want people to be running out there trying to trap coyotes and trying to kill them. We prefer to let the professionals do that because they know what they're doing. There's a difference in opinions as to how government agencies should protect the public when a coyote has been declared a public safety animal. The department supports selective removal of aggressive individuals when the totality of the circumstances is taken into account. We do not recommend, population control efforts because they don't work. Humans have tried for hundreds of years to try and suppress coyote populations, and it hasn't worked. Earlier I said if there's not so many coyotes, but there's a lot of food, they're going to have a lot of offspring. Well, you kill off a good portion of the population, and that situation happens. Also, usually the more aggressive, quote-unquote, animals are the alpha pair, and they're usually the ones that the trappers target. So you take the alpha pair out of that system, and suddenly all the other females will come into heat because the alpha pair is the only ones that are a breeding pair. So you take the alpha pair out, the other females will come into heat, and then all of a sudden they have all these pups. And so that causes the population to rapidly get back to the prior levels. So population control does not work. So Wildlife Watch. Wildlife Watch was developed specifically for coyotes and coyote issues, although we have branched into other wildlife like bears. And it's based on Neighborhood Watch. And you obviously have a very strong Neighborhood Watch program here. And basically what we do is we start with the city, and we encourage the city to prepare a coyote management plan. And the most important part of that plan is a description of a coyote's behavior and then the response. So perhaps if it was just a sighting, the city would respond with education and information. If it was an attack on a human, which is very rare, by the way, if it's an attack on a human, then the department is the lead agency, and we would come in and seek out and try and find that individual that did the attack and euthanize it. So there's a broad spectrum of coyote behaviors in between them, and then we help the city determine what the response is going to be. So that coyote management plan is very important, and a large part of most coyote plans are education. And the department doesn't have the resources necessarily to educate everyone and every community. So what we do is we train the community volunteers to do the education. And a lot of times that works in the community's advantage because unfortunately, not everyone in the community likes to be told by an agency person what to do. And a lot of times neighbors telling other neighbors ways that they can deter coyotes goes over a lot better, and it lasts a little bit longer. The human behavior lasts a little bit longer. So that's a little delve into our Wildlife Watch program. If you want more information, you can go to that address that I have up there, or you can just go to any search engine and you can type in California Wildlife Watch and you'll get our webpage. And then finally, who do I contact for more information? We have our Natural Resource Volunteer Program up on top. That's our 562 number is our LA County number. And they are specially trained volunteers who can answer general questions about most backyard wildlife, including coyotes. I also included our regional headquarters in San Diego. So if you wanted more information or to talk to a biologist, we can direct you to the proper biologist. In an emergency, if someone is attacked by a coyote, you want to dial 911, and the police department automatically knows to contact us. And then I have my email address up there if you want to contact me directly about any of your wildlife concerns. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have at this time. I hope that you got some out of it. Any questions? Yes?
You mentioned don't feed the coyotes. What about leaving water out?
Yeah, leaving water out is not recommended as well. It brings animals together, and it's really a huge way that diseases spread. Especially now, we're getting avian influenza in our Southern California counties. You know, the birds will visit the water together, and it's just not a good idea. The animals find their water sources without having to leave water out for them. Yes?
What else can we do just in our own yard? You mentioned fences with overhangs or rollers. Is there anything else we can do? I have small pets.
Mm-hmm.
Just make sure that they're all right.
Yeah, you want to keep your pets indoors as much as you can. I had a 10-pound Chihuahua for 16 years, and she passed away a couple of years ago. And every day of those 16 years, I would take her outside and supervise her when she had to do her thing. Because I live in an area that has coyotes, we have mountain lions, we have bobcats, we have bears, we have birds of prey, so she's a target for a lot of different species. So yeah, keeping pets indoors, keeping pet foods indoors, managing the yard and trimming shrubs up a couple of feet off the ground so that there's no hiding places. A lot of people will like to install motion activated lights. That might work at first, but again, you know, coyotes are urban critters and they understand what lights are, and if there's nothing scary that follows that light, then they're just going to kind of ignore it. But it is a good warning to you so that if you hear dogs barking, if you see the light go on, then you can investigate and haze the animal out of your yard. Yes?
Are there any solutions or gimmicks out there that people try to sell, like this scent you spread it around your yard and it'll go away, or use some kind of a sonic device that puts out a pitch that they can hear but we can't? Are there devices like that? I mean, that don't work or do work? Or something?
Well, there are devices like that on the market, but they don't work. Again, you know, I've heard people try to use wolf urine, and you know, coyotes know that we don't have wolves around here, so you know they can actually be kind of attracted to it because it's an interesting new scent. There is something that we were talking about in our bear workshop last week. That's a device called a critter alarm, and it's actually I can't remember the company name right now. Margot Gadfly critter alarm. And you can put that, if you have poultry, you can put that on the chicken coop, and when the animal goes by it senses the animal, and an alarm goes off and different lights go off, and that can be kind of scary, especially if you hear your critter alarm go off and you go out there with banging pots and pans and physically scare the animal off. That can work. I've seen little jackets, little vests made with little spikes that supposedly prevent the coyote from latching onto the animal, and I don't know, I haven't seen any studies on whether or not that's effective, but I think that the recommendations that we make are just fine. So yeah, no scents, no other kind of deterrents that you can spray on or or use. Yes?
So, in other words, what I'm understanding is that we have to learn to live with them because there are no solutions, they are not going to be relocated, and it's them that they own the neighborhood. Like, for example, I'm trying to educate a feral cat who I've been in twice a day. I'm in love with him. I'm always afraid that something's gonna happen to him. But what is gonna, I mean, there is no solution there?
Well, there is a solution. That's keeping pets indoors. That's like I said the whole time. I know, but it's the only way really, because like I said, we would love to remove all of the coyotes and move them into the forest, but it's not going to work. Even if we were able to round them up, which we wouldn't be able to because they're very difficult to trap, even if we were to be able to do that and remove them all, that would be a temporary solution because there's coyotes everywhere. And like I say, it opens up a niche for them, and they're going to come in, and you're going to see within a season, you'll start seeing the same problems over and over again. There really is, the only way really is to do the recommendations that we make, remove the attractants, manage your habitat, keep pets indoors, and your pets will be safe, and you won't have to worry about that, and people not feeding the coyotes as well.
So in other words, our small pets, they are prisoners of them. They have to be indoor all the time because they are free, roaming around.
Well, I've had pets my whole life, and they've been indoor pets their whole lives, and they have rich, happy lives. I take them traveling with me, I take them out on walks, I take them out into the hills. I don't consider myself keeping my pets in prison. I consider that protecting my pets.
But they want to play in the backyard. We want to be able to walk in the neighborhood with them, and we don't want to be in fear that they are roaming around and we're in danger of them.
Well, again, if you have such bad coyote or problems, and if there are aggressive coyotes, you can hire a trapper to trap them and professionally, humanely euthanize them. But you have to keep in mind, that's just a temporary situation. The coyote that dies, there's going to be more that comes in, because that opens up a spot for the next coyote to come in. Yes, sir.
So basically, we need to learn how to live with it. They're going to remain here.
They're part of the landscape. Coyotes have been part of this area for thousands of years, actually. They have coyote remains in La Brea tar pits that they found. 3,000 years ago they've been here. They've always been a part of this area, and coyotes traditionally throughout history have always had a sort of a relationship with humans, not like a dog and a cat, not like a pet, but they recognize humans as a provider of food, and they always have. So there's always this relationship that coyotes have with humans. So that's not going to change. Trapping and killing all the coyotes in the neighborhood is not going to change that.
But the coyotes are allowed to kill, let's say, a cat that run away and he's scared or got out of the house by a mistake. And the owner is looking for him, and he finds out that the coyote killed him.
Well, unfortunately, that does happen. In my own neighborhood, there were a lot of feral cats one season, and we have coyotes that go down the wash. Every morning and every evening, you can hear them go down the wash. Well, when the feral cat population started increasing in my neighborhood, the coyotes started coming into the yards, and they started taking pets. And then when the feral cats were all gone, the coyotes went back to the wash, and they left all the pets alone. So keeping pets outside is not a good idea. Even your vet will tell you, they have a higher probability of getting disease, of getting hit by a car, of getting preyed upon by predators than indoor pets.
So if we don't feed the coyotes as residents, they'll go find their food elsewhere, like at the banks of the freeway or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's the idea.
That holds true with feeding birds and feeding feral cats too. You guys really shouldn't do either one of those. When you feed the birds, it brings more birds. If you feed cats, it brings more cats.
Yeah, you feed the birds, it brings the birds. Also the seed brings rodents. The coyotes are going to come after the rodents and the birds. The cats are going to come after the birds. So, you know, it's a cycle. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so is that like part to inform like the neighborhood, like is there like part of the city's responsibility to kind of like pass out some kind of flyer or some kind of information or one of the sites?
Yeah, that's what we hope to do with Wildlife Watch. because, like I say, education is so important. People probably don't even know that they're contributing to the problem. And as much as we love to get out and educate people, we don't have the resources to go out to every community like we should and go face to face. I've really found that just handing out a brochure only goes so far. But when you go out and talk to the people door to door, that really makes an impact, and it's proven it's worked.
Because now it's very now you see them like 12 o'clock midday. It's like more often than
Yeah.
than actually.
Yeah, when you start seeing them during the day, now it's time to start getting the neighborhood together to start changing the human behavior. Yes.
Okay, so to kind of expand on that, on next door, we are getting reports of seeing them during the day. And we actually have schools and playgrounds in the area.
Mm-hmm.
If they're coming out during the day, should we be monitoring campuses and play yards more closely? I mean, should we be concerned about that?
Well, if you have the resources to do that, that would be a great idea. Yeah, I just lost my train of thought, I'm sorry. But yeah, if you have the resources to do that, that would be a really great idea. And, you know, educating the kids is really important too, to know what to do and what not to do. Don't go up to the little doggy and try and pet it, that kind of thing.
Probably like even the schools, like the principals send out more information. Like,
Mm-hmm.
It's like he's right, like there's a lot of, they come out in the day, not like nothing. So when the kids are coming out, or it's like there's more activity.
Mm-hmm.
So we need them, I guess, more information, like you said, to spread that information so they.
Yeah. And that's what we're here for. That's what our volunteer program is for. And that's what the Wildlife Watch program is for, is to help the city do that. Yes, young man.
I was asking, you know how the coyotes were here for thousands of years? I've seen a coyote behind a fence where residents just walk. How do they get on the opposite side of the fence so that they can hear us here?
Well, they can jump over the fence, depending on how tall it is, or they can dig underneath. A lot of times they like to dig underneath because it's a lot easier than jumping over. I'm sorry?
They're on rooftops now.
They're on rooftops?
Rooftop.
Wow, that's pretty crazy. I've never heard of that before. Yeah.
And there's photos on next door of a coyote on the roof.
Really? That's another thing that I wanted to mention too, is the community needs to start reporting to the Department of Fish and Wildlife, because we have not had reports of coyotes in this community. And it's really important that we know. Yeah.
And some of our neighbors have been posting a link where we, and contact info where we can report coyote sightings. So maybe your department hasn't received those reports yet?
No.
But some other link, they've been receiving reports.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we need to receive those reports so that we know where the problems are.
We'll let you know.
If you go to our homepage and you scroll down, there's a box that says Living with Wildlife and a button to push. You push the button, and then on the right-hand side, there's a prompt that will say report a wildlife incident. www.wildlife.ca.gov.
Yeah, the one that I'm seeing posted is LA County. So it's acwm.lacounty.gov, coyote sighting report. So apparently the county has a reporting mechanism.
Okay.
I don't know if they report to you or not, but apparently they are accumulating data.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if you can let me know who I can contact, if you,
Dig it up.
or if you can send me a link
Send you that.
to that.
Sure.
Should be the Carson Shelter, they cover this area.
Okay.
So LA County Carson Shelter, they have a specific group out of that agency that handles wildlife.
Okay. Oh, that's important
But
for
they
us to
should be
know.
reporting to
Yeah.
Fish and Wildlife.
Yeah, they should.
So just like we give statistical information every year, we should be doing the same thing.
Yeah.
But I did have a question. So for injured coyotes, if you see a coyote limping, what would be the best way to deal with that? Would you call local animal control? Because what they do is they chase the animal out, and he's already injured.
Yeah.
Or should you just leave it alone because he's not bothering anybody?
For the most part, and I'll get to you in a minute now. For the most part, you would just want to leave it alone. I mean, there's a difference. If it's just limping, they can get along pretty well. They're pretty tough individuals. If its leg is broken or it's dragging its leg behind it and it can't get around, that's when you'd want to give me a call. And we would assess the animal and determine whether or not we would humanely euthanize it. If it's, because with adult coyotes, they're not, they're usually, depending on the injury, but they're usually not rehabilitated. It's usually the pups. But it really depends on the situation. So for the most part, when they're sick or injured, they do fine. But if it's something really major, then you would contact the department.
Okay.
Oh, and now I was going to get you.
I didn't hear everything you said, but you might have answered actually. I was just going to say, you said you guys weren't aware. Well, I had somebody come to my door with a brochure to talk to me about coyotes.
Oh, really? Was it one of our
I gave
people?
you that brochure, and is that how this meeting happened?
No, that was LA County.
Okay,
County has
so they came to the door and they were aware. They told me we've had coyote sightings. That's why I'm going door to door.
So what they've done is they've created this unit in LA County Animal Control, and they've not let Fish and Wildlife know. With us, in the city that I work for, we have close contact with you guys. So when we do have an issue, you are the person we go to. We don't go to LA County, we go to Fish and Wildlife. And they should be reporting that as well.
Yeah.
But I don't think they're sharing the
No,
information.
they're not.
We'll put
They're
them
not.
together.
Yeah.
One more thing. Are pigeons protected?
No. No.
Are tag pigeons protected?
No.
So I have
No.
like 300 pigeons that have been over my house for about 6 months now. And me and everybody in my yard and all my vehicles and everything is covered with, And so we tried everything. And they're not protected. Like I don't want to kill them, but if we shoot rubber things, can we do, if they're not protected, it's okay, right?
Well, the
I don't know
department
what
says
else
it's
to do.
okay. I don't know if your city's going to say that's okay. It really depends on if there's a strict firearms ordinance.
No, it's not a firearm. It's like a rubber.
Well, in some communities, even a slingshot is considered a firearm. So, yeah.
Any suggestions?
Property.
If they're what?
Wouldn't that be an issue if they're considered property? Is there tag? I know.
I
that
don't
with
know.
pigeons, we usually, if we have them or we trap them, we house them,
Mhm.
and then we release them. Because typically they're tired or exhausted and they need a couple days, then we release them, they go. But if they're tagged only, other pigeons we really don't care about. It's only the ones that are tagged.
Yeah, I'd have to think about that because usually the tagging doesn't indicate that it's property unless it's someone that they're homing pigeons or something like that.
Homing pigeon.
Yeah, if they're a homing pigeon, then that's a domesticated bird,
Yeah.
and we don't have jurisdiction over that, so I wouldn't be able to advise you on that.
Would they hang out in a flock of like 100 if they were tagged?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No.
I got like 100.
Yeah.
Not always, no, not always, because we find homing pigeons all the time. Yeah, if they're being flown from one place to another, then they're kind of on their own.
Anything else? Yes.
Understanding that they will continue to reproduce, why would there not be a consistent effort to uphold the population similar to what many states do here?
Again, you take a certain percentage of the population out, and they're going to start a strategy that's going to build that population up really quickly. So they're going to have more pups, and the subordinate females will come into heat, and they'll start having pups.
Why not
So,
take out a larger percentage?
yeah, it's been tried for hundreds of years, and it doesn't work.
So
They're just too wily coyote. I'm sorry?
So it's impossible to cull the population.
Yeah, and even if you could successfully do that in an area, there's so many coyotes elsewhere that they're just going to enter the area eventually.
But if not on a consistent basis, that could even provide temporary relief.
There are cities that are trying to do that right now, and they're not having that great of success. And
It
it's,
has to be better than nothing.
I'm sorry?
It has to be better than nothing.
No, they haven't. They really haven't been having success. The people that are feeding the coyotes are still feeding the coyotes. The people that are keeping their pets outside are still keeping their pets outside. The coyotes are still attacking pets and causing problems. So,
What would be done on people who are feeding coyotes, just begging them to stop?
ordinances, no feeding ordinances. That's another part of Wildlife Watch that we help develop ordinances that can help curb human behavior.
And those things are on the books for like the city of Hawthorne, LA County has that ordinance, and it's consistent with illegal dumping. So if you're caught illegally dumping food for animals, feral cats or anything like that, you should call that agency. And if you know who that person is, you report that person and their violation. So LA County is ours. So we contact LA County Animal Control and you know this person was found feeding in this area and that's what we're doing.
And not just coyotes, but other.
Cats, feral cats, either.
So it's illegal for me to feed my feral cat
If
in
you
my
are
home?
feeding it, it's illegally dumped. So if you're not cleaning up after you've done that,
He has his plate, it's being washed.
but you have to know
houses,
that
everything.
now that you fed that cat, you are the owner, the legal owner of that cat.
Okay.
So they'll tell you you have to license it, you have to spay it or neuter it, and
But
you have to.
he already has his, here, clip.
Anytime they see one outside, they say that's your pet. So you can't say
I want
it's
him
just a
to
feral
be
or
part of
anything
my
like that.
family, but he's a feral cat. He's not.
True, so he's an outdoor cat, but he's still, you'll be.
And that's my concern about the coyotes. And my concern about me too, because I walk my dog at night.
Well, you need to change that because you're just putting yourself at risk.
I understand that.
There's nothing. The department can't change the coyotes' behavior. We can only encourage humans to change their behavior. So if you continue to do the same behaviors, then you're going to continue to see coyote problems.
Walk him at night because he's a rescue dog and he has emotional problems. Only at night I can walk. So different situation and it's frustrating because we have to live in fear of the coyotes. It seems like they are more important than anything else.
You know, a lot of people feel that way. They are an important animal. They're important to the ecology of the ecosystem. And I think that the more people learn about coyotes, the less scary they become. And I encourage you to learn more about coyotes so that you're not so fearful of them, and to change your behavior so that you're not putting yourself and your pets at risk.
No, we are because we see posts next door where small dogs being attacked. And we are in fear.
Well, again, that's why we want to bring Wildlife Watch into the community so that everyone is educated, so that everyone knows what to do. Yes.
So if we as residents don't do anything with coyote population, just increase, continue to increase?
It's hard to say. More than likely, yes, especially if they're being fed.
You find a certain size, like any predator prey animal type, you find a certain size of animal, once it reaches a certain height, they won't go after it. Like let's say a 60-pound dog, they're gonna make a 10-pound dog versus a 60-pound dog. I mean, that's just natural sense, right? So if you have a bigger dog, you're less likely to be attacked by a coyote.
Yeah.
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 These bigger dogs, folks.
So if it's a family of coyotes, some coyotes will attack together, and so they can take down the 60-pound dog. It's not
Yeah, that's why we recommend even the large dogs need to be brought in at night.
They don't typically attack a pack, they a wolf.
They pretty much they're a stalk and pounce type animal. That's how they hunt. So they don't really they can work together, but it's more of a solo stalk than pounce.
in the ecosystem, there's nothing harming them.
Humans. Yes.
I've seen dead cats
I wouldn't know for your city. I know that in rural areas there's animal carcass pickups, and I have a list that you can go online and find it online, dead animal pickups, and it lists all the counties and the people who pick up the carcasses.
I think LA Animal Control is dead animal, or eco animal control.
Yes.
So lived in this neighborhood for about 30 years, and for the first 25, no coyotes. And it's only been the past 5 years that there's been a coyote problem killing the pets. So why did the coyotes live in? Where did they live?
Mm-hmm.
And is there something that people can do to make it less hospitable other than removing the food source?
Right. Well.
But can you go after where they're living, where they're sleeping?
Yeah, the reason why they moved in, that would be really difficult for me to answer without having a before and after study and taking a look at a lot of things. Anecdotally, it's probably just because the coyote population in general, nationwide, is expanding and growing. And also there's a cyclic nature of coyote incidents. We'll see it bubble up in one community for a couple of years, and then it'll die down, and then it'll go to another community. And we don't know if that's because the coyotes are moving or if it's because human behaviors are changing. I know that at one coyote presentation that I went to several years ago in Manhattan Beach, the folks at Loyola Marymount put on a presentation, and they had a clip of a public service announcement that was done throughout LA in the 1950s, talking about coyotes and what to do and what not to do with coyotes. So these problems have been around, but they tend to be cyclic, and they're not always consistent.
To your point, we've had an explosion of feral cats in the neighborhoods.
All the feral cats that used to live on Glasgow Strip are gone.
We have over here in the Wiseburn tract, we've got just 100 everywhere. That's part of the problem. My neighbors are part of the problem.
So what about where the coyote is sleeping?
Usually they're sleeping in, areas where, other people's houses, if they allow them, that access under the houses or under the decks. They could be sleeping in wooded areas and in brushy areas and shrubby areas. So they just kind of go into, what is more habitat away from the humans a little bit at night. But they're still within the community.
Yeah, so there are neighbors, we just don't know where they live.
Right. Yes.
I seen like at 6:30 in the morning, on the freeway bypass, there's a fence, but I don't know if it's homeless. They open the fence, so I seen a couple of them coming out of that brush right next to the freeway. So I think a lot of them live there in those areas.
Yeah, I really didn't have an awful lot of time to try and look at an aerial view of the community. I wish I would have, because then I would have been able to answer that question a little bit better. But yeah, they tend to go into shrubby, brushy areas at night, and places, like I said, in yards that offer them shelter.
We're also just now starting to get back to where the county, the cities, Caltrans, is back from COVID, starting to do the trimming like they used to do. We had 2 full years of overgrown brush. With COVID, nobody was doing that issue.
Anybody else? Okay, well, if you have any other questions, you have my email address. You can contact me, and thank you very much for having me out. I really appreciate it.